See, should we? How many people do we have on the call? Got a couple. Should we wait a minute, or should we?
I think we're 2 minutes over.
See a name I don't recognize. Orion, do you just want to introduce yourself and say hello? Okay. It's fine too. So I don't know that we have a whole bunch to discuss this week. I don't know. It just feels like things were slow because of the break. So I just created this short little agenda a minute ago with things that were top of my mind, and maybe people can add to it. I just wanted to go over some of the recent changes that affect policy and telemetry. We switched to using 128 bits for trace IDs. This was a request, so that was pretty easy. In Mixer, we were having issues around random number generation for trace spans, and so we've opted to use NoopSpans when the requests came through. It was not selected for sampling in the tracing. That should dramatically improve contention there. I verified the work that had been done for IP whitelisting, including using subnets in the whitelist. And there's some discussion on Istio, or discussed at Istio about that as well. That's some of the stuff that I've noticed in the last week that's gone on, in addition to improved end-to-end test stability. So I don't know if there's other things that people want to discuss, changes they want to mention. Okay.
The next point.
Yeah, do you want to talk about some of the Perf and scalability work?
Yeah, so I think some of it may be repetition, but we've had this issue with telemetry specifically, that under certain circumstances, telemetry memory and CPU and Go routines kind of grow unbounded, and until basically it consumes everything there is, and then it's killed. It's not just traffic related, because normally under the same amount of traffic everything works fine. So it is definitely a timing type issue, which causes Istio telemetry to get into that sort of spot under the same amount of load. What we have found in debugging that is there are 3 or 4 bottlenecks that those requests can hit because of contention, right? Because there are these shared resources. One of the first ones that we hit was the OpenSense's internal telemetry collection. Then there was the trace ID, right? And trace ID involved creating random number, which had another shared resource, which had lots of contention. And then ultimately the Prometheus adapter itself, which has internal queues, and that was the final contention. So we have a test fix for the Prometheus, which actually there is a test fix that's in the Prometheus client library, but I want to avoid that, and I want to have a fix that's in Istio code instead of their code, and that's being tested. But one of the things that came out of all this is that large Istio telemetry instances, right, which are vertically scaled, right, using like 20, 30 CPUs and using lots of memory, it's more likely that they get into this sort of scenario. So in addition to kind of solving this and getting to the root cause and fixing all these things, we have just started testing with a larger number of smaller Istio telemetry instances. And the expectation is that when you have smaller telemetry instances, they're less likely to have this sort of like huge contention of thousands of connections being concentrated in one and then causing downstream effects. So we're actually testing and measuring that right now, and that would be done in next several days. And in addition to that, we have already added overload protection, right, which was added just a few months ago. We want to deploy these with a reasonable overload protection as a default, which means that even if it does get into that sort of situation, it won't kind of continue growing unbounded and it won't just use up everything. Overload protection will kick in and kick out some of the traffic.
So remind me how that works. Does it just drop requests? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there is no back pressure. It doesn't tell the client that you should drop request.
Okay.
So we still end up doing some work, but it's way less than the full work.
Well, it sends 503s, so
It sends 503s.
theoretically the client could do something, but
Yeah, but it,
And are we tying into the live disk checks, health checks?
no.
Okay, so if we did that, that would tell.
That removes. Yeah, so I actually have tested with that as well. The issue that I found there was if there is something kind of more systemic, then suddenly several Istio telemetry pods say that we are not available. But yes, I think that's a reasonable thing to move forward.
I haven't heard anything from the gRPC team on
the
applying back pressure at the
pressure.
network level. Don't pick up the request if you can't deal with it.
Yeah, that just at the TCP level, right?
That's really what you want, right? So they just need a little callback somewhere that calls back into us, and then we can tell them stop,
Right.
sit there for a while, and then go get a request or something.
Oh, you know what? I think we could. So gRPC server takes a listener abstraction as the thing that it uses, right? And normally we just pass in the regular listener abstraction, which is net.listener. So we could actually introduce something there that says, I'm just not going to read from the socket now until there is something more. I'm doing something similar for pilot, also like hooking in to there and setting in an abstraction. But I think that should be something we could.
Actually, that could be generic code.
Yeah, we could try that.
yeah,
I'm not certain it'll work. We'll definitely have to.
How could it not?
Streaming. How does it work with framing and streaming?
Yeah.
Right, because I mean, we may stop reading and like ideally you want to read a frame and then don't read the next frame, right? You don't want to like stop. You don't want to read 8 bytes in the frame and then.
I guess I was thinking that we would simply just not call listen. So
No. So listen has to be called. The choice that you have is when someone issues a read, right? You will say, well, I'm not going to read because I know that I'm not able to process it. So you can stall the read.
Yeah, the problem is the gRPC is multiplexed, and also some like maintenance frames.
Right. Yeah. So we won't be able to distinguish between like those sorts of like go away frames and other frames.
yeah, so
And
this really needs to
traffic.
be done by
Right.
gRPC.
So they should really do that sort of stuff.
Okay.
All right. That's all.
Okay. Is there anything anyone else that has joined the call would like to talk about or discuss or mention?
Prometheus, Prometheus thing, right?
Yeah, we add a new container to Prometheus deployment so that Prometheus will check whether certs are ready or not if Citadel is also deployed in the cluster. The PRs is pending. Yeah.
And this is to allow scraping application metrics that are protected by.
Yes, right.
Yep.
Okay. I think last month you got an action item for namespace for service entries. Has that anything happened there?
There's a agenda item for networking meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
But it hasn't been discussed yet in networking.
similarly, I guess we also have the question about virtual service telemetry. That's also
It's the same
Same.
item actually. It's
Okay.
one big item for all networking methods.
That's Thursday. Yeah.
It keeps being pushed back, so I'm not sure it's going to happen tomorrow. But
I mean, maybe, yeah, like there's already lots of stuff going on in that meeting, so maybe we can just pursue it on
Separately.
well on and on the mailing list.
and there's no mailing list.
Well, to discuss.
You can set it up to work like a man.
You can. But
No, that interface is so much better, I think. Yeah, so if it's kind of lower on their agenda, yeah, and we want to make progress, then I think just having it on the discuss is probably better, and then just get it rubber stamped in the meeting at the end.
well, I'm not. I think it was actually a main list at some point, so I'm not sure it's going to actually be.
Right.
And where did it come from? Yeah, I think I asked a question on Istio networking,
Right.
and then it turned into an agenda.
And then it turned
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably worth at least a few minutes discussion face to face to get on the same page.
The other thing that we had mentioned before was, and I've lost track of it just because I've lost track of it. Where do we stand on the server-side check cache? Is it?
It's currently disabled. And should probably enable it, but I was waiting for the test to stabilize, which I assume they got better lately with check cache not being as flaky as before. So we can try to turn it on and see.
Yeah, because there are people that are going to start using heavily, depending on check calls. So they want the cache to work.
Yeah, it's a method set in default. It's just I just need some confidence that we're not breaking it again.
Yeah, I think the in test check cache tests is now much more stable. So
Yeah, so it's a
It's
good
good
place to start from.
Okay, so you're going to try and get that on for 1.1?
Yeah, just small PR to turn it on.
Yeah, change the default, right?
Okay. Let's see how it goes.
I guess,
So should we do that, or because it's just as easy to tell someone who needs it to say, hey, okay, if you need it, so change the configuration.
I think it affects performance, so it should probably have it measurements with it on.
Yeah, so
Okay.
as long as it's correct, it seems like it should be on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. As long as it's correct, it should be on. Okay.
that's basic criteria.
I mean, that's,
Unless you're thinking it's going to somehow decrease performance, right?
no. Well,
Or add to,
Well, it'll increase memory use.
yeah.
Yes, it could. So that's why.
right. Increased memory use may not actually affect performance because it may not that may not be the issue.
And this is not for telemetry,
This one policy, right?
policy.
Yeah.
So we don't have a perf problem with policy so much, right? We
Not
don't have the
right.
same issues.
We
Not.
don't have as many people using it.
Yeah, we don't have a
It's a rate limit, right? Which is
Yeah, but
once per minute.
Hmm?
Is it caching on the client causes a rate limit basically because you don't call as much.
right.
well, but that's the problem, right? These you can have dramatic increase in load by virtue of having cache misses. So suddenly you can get a
thundering
swamp mixer, and then mixer it's not in its cache either. And so on the good day you get excellent performance. On a bad day, things.
Yeah, it has to measure that with the cache and not with.
Yeah, it's interesting. So with Mixer v2, we're not going to get that secondary cache.
Correct.
At all.
Well, so then it is going to be up to the adapter or whoever we're calling to maintain that second level cache.
Yeah, I've been wondering if we should at some point in the Mixer
generic-
v2, add some memcache thing
And some memcache support like right there.
in Mixer. So from Envoy you can share the cache results. So then that would
Right.
actually be more efficient than what we have in v1.
Yeah, we could. I would measure first one of the
Let's get V2 working.
I know.
Yes.
It's like
I mean,
stuff
but
on top.
just the cache itself is useful. It's not. It's a different cache, but it's shared.
Well, that's the thing. So if the reason I mentioned this is if we're not going to have this in V2, at least in the say we don't have it in 1.2 and 1.3, and we only have it by the time we hit 1.4, then maybe you should leave it off in 1.1.
Well,
Because otherwise we'll have a perf decrease in 1.2.
Maybe.
Yeah, so the one thing we can do is also make the cache bigger in the proxy. That alleviate some of the stuff.
I mean, there is a benefit of having distributed cache that we don't have.
Yeah.
It's not either of those caches, it's a different cache.
Right.
Yeah, the local cache, when you think it's, you're talking 100 microseconds or something to talk to a local cache versus 100 milliseconds to talk to Active Directory on the internet somewhere. It's a high value, definitely.
Do we have any measurements from our internal mixer about the shared cache hit rates or anything like that?
No. I mean, for chemists?
Because if we do, then I think that would be a good guide to say, hey, yeah, the secondary cache hit rate, if it's high in a normal scenario, then it's definitely useful.
Well, I can tell you that I'll check.
Okay.
I'm sure we have these numbers, but the chemist maintains like a gigabyte of cache,
Right.
which means somebody decided that was useful.
That was hopefully.
Yeah, there's no reason to believe the access pattern should be that much different.
Right. Yeah.
Do we want to talk at all about some of the stuff that's kind of fly in for 1.1 that's still in flight? So I know like we have the changes to make sure that things are closed and check that we've closed things out properly instead of report that things aren't closed when they're really closed for handlers.
Yeah.
We have this work that was on annotations for turning off check policy enforcement. Are we still targeting that for 1.1?
Yes.
Okay. So it's pod annotations, policy enforcement, better close handling afters. What are the other big outstanding things for 1.1? Is there any route directive stuff that's still landing for 1.1?
There might be, but I don't know how priority it is. There's a request to supply different request code, response code, and response body. But it's a feature request, so I'm not sure if I want to make it.
Okay.
Is on-process adapter off still target 1.1, or should we delay it? I mean, if the throws gonna happen this Friday, I don't know whether do we still have time to check that in.
What's missing?
Auto process adapter off.
Yes. That should also land.
Okay.
So that's on.
Wait, I don't understand what that means. Auto process.
The auth PR.
Oh, off. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
I heard off. Okay, so if we don't have this, then auto process adapters are still useless.
It's plain text.
So we need to get it there. It's like one of our 2 features for 1.1.
Yeah.
Auto process adapters and galley. We both need to be there.
Is there anything else that anyone knows of that needs to be addressed for 1.1?
Hey guys, just quick clarification on the pod annotations for policy enforcement. Is that a net new enhancement to the way that?
Yeah, this will be a new feature.
Okay.
It'll allow you to opt out of policy for certain workloads, or to change it from fail close to fail open if you wanted to use policy.
Nice. Okay. Okay.
So via pod annotation.
Yes, because right now we just have the global mesh
Yeah.
setting. So it gives you some more resolution.
The idea is that the injector has control over it. So if you have control over injector, you have control over it.
So we don't want to do this at the workload level.
Well, so I think, yeah, at the deployment level is sort of where I think it fits naturally.
Yeah.
I think there's an open question as to whether or not this should be one of the things that we coalesce into a service config or workload config or whatever we call it.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, it is the same question that's applied everywhere, right? Any configuration can be a CRD or it can be an annotation. And I mean, our bias should actually be towards CRD.
Yeah.
But annotations are so much easier that's what ends up happening. So
It depends on granularity of control, because it depends how much control you want to have over policy checks. If it's like just pod is enough, then I think annotation is fine. If you want more fine-grained, like protocol-based or like service-based, then it becomes better.
with the CRD, like we can do anything that we want in the CRD, and then it's
CRD it takes more work.
yeah, right, exactly. It just takes more work. It becomes an API change, whereas annotation is like a slip.
It's also an API
slipstream
change.
API.
Yes, yeah, I tend to think that it is an API and we have to be careful about using it.
I think that to me the key difference is who's responsible for managing the cohesiveness of these annotations. If it's on the pod, it's up to the user to make sure that all the pods of their workloads have that annotation. If we do it in a CRD that just says this workload has this feature, then we take over that responsibility. Right?
It's still, I mean, it's still up to the user, right? So ultimately, if I am the service owner, I have a choice of either expressing the fact that I want to like deny on check failure. I can put that in the CRD and associate it with my service, or I can put it in an annotation and
The
add
problem
it
is
to my deployment.
yeah. That's fair.
So it's not actually that different.
And from a user's perspective, either way, they'll be able to interface with the CRD. They're going to be able to put this in the YAML either way, right?
Yes, correct.
It's a different YAML.
Yeah, it's just a different snippet of YAML. That's all.
Does one versus the next bear weight on, like, as you enter into this and you talk about granularity and sort of inheritance and kind of global level settings versus those that get overridden the more, as you go down the funnel, is one of those easier to handle within a CRD versus annotation approach?
In fact, I think maybe the annotation approach is the terminal case. The thing can be global. You can have it next at the namespace level, and then you can target an individual pod and
say, yeah,
you behave this way. That's interesting. So I think what really matters here is cohesiveness with the rest of the platform. Right. So there's Sven has more than half. He's got a proposal underway on how we do use workload selectors and that kind of stuff to specify what
you're targeting.
What you're targeting with this config. So we want to apply this universally.
Right, but with annotations we sidestep that, right? With annotations we leave that up to the user. So
I know, but that's
you put it wherever it needs to go.
So that's saying, look, we're going to converge everything else. Meanwhile, we're going to go over here and do something totally different. So if the annotations seem like a reasonable thing, but it needs to be done in the context of Istio as a whole. If it makes sense for mixer things, then it probably makes sense for other things as well.
Oh, we have tons of annotations already.
Yeah. So, but we're not tracking them. They're not systematically documented.
There's lots of issues with it in terms of responsible. I think at best we tag it as an alpha way of doing it, and then hopefully a more holistic, at least in my mind, a more holistic.
Yeah, I think I'll go put a note in Sven's doc that says we need to deal, as part of the same holistic thing, we need to deal with annotations as well.
So I think that this particular PR in some ways has to at least go through a quick API review, sanity check. Well, one of the reasons is that it introduces new annotation routes, right? So policy.sidecar.istio.io/check. That's a That's a convention.
Yeah, that's a convention that you can find if you look at the code, but it's actually nowhere documented. And it'd be nice to have a discipline.
So
about
we need to have some agreement on that's how we're going to do it in the future, or
And probably on the naming.
on the naming as well. Yeah.
Do we continue with fail closed, fail open?
No, that's terrible. I hate that.
I know I think we're on the same page there, but I'm not sure that the rest of the world agrees. So we need some.
And we need to surface this in the docs.
Yes.
These types.
Okay, so we'll add it to this Friday's.
That's right.
API review.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So who defined this?
Well, it's a request that was privatized, and I had to do a quick solution, and that seems a good start.
Yeah, so like I think completely disabling it was already in like some PRs, but the fail policy was not, which is why I was confused when you guys started talking about it. Because
I mean, there's only one control right now, which is global mesh.
Right, just everything. Yeah.
And what would be the equivalent of annotations for non-Kubernetes systems?
Oh, that's a good question. Annotations were meant to be extensions of pod specs, because it took a long time for people to extend specs, so they put everything in annotations. So if you don't have a pod spec, then I think it's a totally different story.
So I think that it would be on a case by case basis, right? It's like whatever description you have, put the metadata there.
Yeah.
And it's to be decided, like whatever the vehicle is, so in theory it's not incompatible, right? It's just a map and you stick it somewhere.
Yeah.
And as long as you make it available to the injector and then eventually to pilot, you're good.
And it's a good question, because like if you look at Ingress, it has like over 50 different annotations. And part of the problem is that Ingress spec is too limited. So people had to find a way around it. And if you don't limit the spec, you don't need to have that many annotations. So on other platforms, you might just have expected to have extensible spec.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, the other is environment variables, which is even worse. So we definitely don't want that.
I was going to actually, it's on my to-do list at some point to have a standard command line, standard way to read environment variables from Go code. So Pilot, Mixer, Citadel can all read environment variables that way, and then we can automatically generate docs.
So at least
Kelsey has a tool. Kelsey has a tool for that kind of purpose, because the reason why they are so abused in Kubernetes is because many programs didn't have like flags or something, and it's hard to pass flags in Kubernetes. So there's a tool that converts environment variables into flags automatically and systematically.
Well, I had started on something that looks like the command line parser. Same principle. You say, in addition to these command line flags, I also take these environment variables of these types. Here's a description, and then it can generate the docs out of that.
So now Pilot has a centralized location where all the environment variables are documented. I don't think we have that in Mixer yet. So,
No, but do we use any?
yeah, we probably don't use any. Yeah. Like Pilot uses many, and now it's in one place. So you can go to one file and say. So
Yeah. So I just want to stick that on this tier.
Right. Yeah.
The only thing I wanted to mention, and I
was going to say, actually, in Galley, Oz is checking in, removing he had tons of command line flags. He's removing those and now just supporting a settings file.
It's have to be careful that, because that's how mesh config got born, and it's not been a good experience.
This is about bootstrapping the config system. So there's a point where you got to cut some slack there.
But we need to be careful not to guarantee like API change completely, because it's difficult with bootstraps.
Yeah.
Oh, I was saying beyond 1.1, there have been some people raising questions about multi-cluster telemetry and policy. I'm having issues, and I don't know that we've spent much time at all looking at that. So I was going to start looking at that over the next couple of days to see what happens. I think the people who added the original code may no longer be participating in the project. So anyways, that's just something else to be aware of. You might see some stuff from me about multi-cluster coming across.
Or you still have a couple doc PRs that are pending.
Yes, and I need to finish those. I forgot. I got this already, then disappeared and left, and I need to go back to this.
I see them every morning, so that's why.
You start sneaking stuff in there, get your attention on other things. Okay. Well, unless anyone else has anything they want to discuss, maybe that's.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.